Hi guys, and welcome back to series 2 of In the Studio. Today's episode is all about planning, and you're going to hear from a few different writers about the way that they sit down to start and write a script. You'll get loads of different perspectives, so you can pick and choose which ones you want to take, or you can ignore all of them and go your own way and find your own means of planning.
Hi, I'm Michaela Barton. I mainly write film critique, but I've been moving a bit more into screenwriting. And my most recent script, House Rules, has been optioned by JumpCut Studios. So the way that I usually plan my writing is that I don't really plan. I kind of just splurge all of my thoughts and hope for the best.
Hi, my name is Chris Watt and I am a screenwriter, and I've been asked very kindly by the folks at JumpCut to talk a little bit about screenplay structure, one that I use quite a lot, which is the circle structure.
Writing. How do you plan a story? I think the most important thing to say is there are no right or wrong answers. Everybody's going to have an approach that works best for them. I think the key thing is to just actually have an approach, because for too long I've not actually had one. A good example would be I Love You Guys, which we will be filming soon. I'm pretty sure I said that in the last episode as well. But I had a basic idea for that, and I wrote it straight away. And then I wrote another draft, and it wasn't really getting anywhere fast.
I'm one of those writers who doesn't actually write all that much. So when I actually get the inspiration and the motivation, I've just got to go for it. And I just splurge everything out. And yeah, so that because of that, I need to do a lot of editing. One of the ways I get around that is I generally write my ideas in a notebook. And just because I'm a faster writer than I am a typer, and once I'm typing it up, if I see something that's just rubbish, that's just not working, I just don't include it or I change it. So that's kind of like a first step of editing, for me at least. But yeah, that works best for when I do short scripts. If I'm doing features, I change it a little bit. I'll still splurge, but I do it in bullet points, because that wastes less time. So I just kind of bullet point everything that I want to happen in each script, in each scene. And yeah, once I've kind of set it all up, that's when I start to write the actual script.
So last week I mentioned briefly about a pre-production folder, and this was something I had to do at university to actually physically get graded, so it wasn't an option for me, I just had to do it. And it's something that I have kind of adopted and put in place before I write anything now, and I just think it's really helpful, because also if you're a director and you intend to direct your script, once you get to the stage where you finish the script, you've got a final draft and you're ready to direct, you've also kind of cut out a step for yourself. And so I think my advice really stems from like a directorial point of view. So what a pre-production folder is for me is it can be like a 10 to 15 page document of everything you know about the script before you start writing. So for me it will usually be the title, the log line, the format, how long I anticipate it to be, and then I'll go on to do a mood board. And for me what a mood board really does is it gets me inside of the world. And as I mentioned before, like this is something that not everyone will want to take on board, not everyone will need to see a world, and not everybody wants to direct their scripts, and so that's why there are other viewpoints for you to listen to. But yeah, once I've done the mood board, I'll either step into beats or characters, and it will usually be just whichever one like I have thought about first. So sometimes a story comes to me before the characters, and sometimes a specific character will come to me, and then I will have to find like their story for myself, and that one's a little bit more tricky to navigate. But what we're going to do actually as well is we're going to have a pack linked down below that you can download, which will contain beat sheets, will contain like a little synopsis about which each beat means, and that was quite a mouthful, and also character biographies that you can fill out, and that will help you like navigate your way into creating one of these.
The circle technique is essentially 8 steps in order to get your main character from a starting point to an ending point and have them change during the journey. Essentially it's one of those tracts on the hero's journey, that thing that Joseph Campbell always wrote about. In the history of storytelling, there really are only 3 basic stories. That's person versus person, person versus environment, and person versus themselves. And within that is pretty much the through line of every story ever told. So the 8 steps to the circle technique are: introduce your protagonist. This is your hero or anti-hero who's going to lead you through the story. Step 2 is to give them a goal, something they need, something they want, or something they need to search for. Step 3, you send them on that journey. Step 4, once you're on that journey, you have to have things in the way that they have to overcome. And those things will often be physical things, they can be metaphysical things. It's anything that essentially drives the character forward, but also gives them things that once they overcome them, they're going to have to change in some way. Step 5 is they find the thing that they're looking for, but maybe it's not quite as simple as they thought. Maybe it's not exactly what they were looking for. Step 6 is what price do they have to pay for that goal? Is there going to be a sacrifice? Is there going to be something else, something bigger that they need to overcome? Step 7 is the return home. Which is a classic trait of any story, is the return home. And step 8 is how's the character changed by the time you get to the end. And the beautiful thing about a circle is you start and you end at exactly the same point. The difference is that the journey he's gone on, or she's gone on, has completely changed them in some way.
Since we went into lockdown, I've been studying screenwriting properly because I never really have taken the opportunity to do that before. I've picked up helpful things along the way, I've read scripts, I've watched TV, and I've just figured, I can pick it all up that way. Finally, I decided, it might be worth reading the trillions of screenwriting books I bought ages ago to convince myself I'm a writer but never actually read. So I did that, and I've kept trying to learn, kept trying to pick things up that help me. And one thing in particular that's really kind of given me a whole new lease of life with all of this is a podcast that I read a transcript of. It was script notes. It was Craig Mazin, the writer of Chernobyl, breaking down his theory of how to write a movie, delving into thematic structure, this idea of theme versus anti-theme. And it's honestly, it's really, really enlightening, really good stuff. I've got 7 pages of notes, which probably speaks for itself.
But I find that method helpful just because once it's all bullet pointed out, it's easier to see if your structure's actually working, or if the characters are working, or if your plot's actually interesting, So, yeah, and I guess my way of writing is I'll come up with an idea for just one random scene, and I'll think, that's kind of interesting, let's write a story around that then. So I don't really write in order, I just kind of write what my idea is there, and then I just kind of fill everything out afterwards. It's probably not the way you're meant to do it, but there you go. If I was writing something that needed research, like if I was writing about a character who had a job that had never worked, then my research would come in the editing stage, and if anything that I wrote was just not working, I just change it. Yeah, it's mainly editing. Splurging and editing is my way to do it.
I like the circle technique, and I use it a lot in my own writing, simply because despite being a set pattern and a set way of doing things, it allows a lot of room to breathe. There's a lot of room to elaborate. Anytime I write any screenplay, I start with a spider chart. I don't know if you folks will remember spider charts from school, where you'll draw a circle, then you'll do little sticks going out of it, and then at the end of those sticks you'll put more little circles, and then within that main circle, that's your story, and then you'll have the characters will be in the outer rim, and then you'll do even more elaborate ones where you'll have plot points and story traits and where you want them to go, and after a while it almost becomes like a spider web, and everything's interconnected, and that's a good way I've found to develop plot. I think you can see a lot of the circle technique in films from the history of cinema. It's used a lot. The Coen brothers use it a lot. You look at something like Inside Llewyn Davis. The character of Llewyn starts at one point and ends actually literally in the same spot with the same event happening. So the film begins and ends with the same event. However, because you have joined Llewyn on that journey, the event has a richer significance by the time you get to that final scene. So the Coen Brothers use it, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings. It's the journey home. That's really what it is. And as any good storyteller will tell you, it isn't about the resolution necessarily. It is about the journey. The goal is almost a MacGuffin in some ways. You see it in Raiders of the Lost Ark as well. Indiana Jones starts and ends exactly the same position. He's no different in terms of what he wanted, but he's a completely different character by the time the story's over. So that, for me, is probably one of the best ways to keep a grasp of character, but also to be creative and to elaborate within that structure.
But something he said in there that really struck a chord with me was that all these books about screenplay structure and all the material is basically a form of analysis. You know, it's looking at scripts as they're finished. It's not helping you when you try and start from scratch. It's not telling you why certain things go where they do. And he goes on to explain why certain things happen where they do. But the key thing for me that stood out was his idea that writers basically follow their characters. That's the key thing. And great writers, if they're doing their job right, follow their characters as they evolve around a central dramatic argument that's meaningful to other human beings. And that basically, based on some other stuff I'd read, watched, that just hit home. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's how I want to shape my thinking going forwards. So my way of planning from here is going to be, you know, you get that flash of inspiration, you get an idea for a story, cool. Then what I want to look at is, okay, what's the heart of this? What's at its core? What am I really exploring here? Because you have your surface level action, you know, I don't know, surviving the zombie apocalypse, whatever, you know, basic. But what is my hook here? What is going to make this meaningful? What am I really delving into? What's my theme? That's basically what I want to look at as my first stop when I come up with a plan. I want to come up with that idea and then I want to research it. I want to look into theme. I want to really bulk up my central dramatic argument. I want to find out all these interesting things I can. So, you know, for example, at the moment, I'm kind of looking into this idea of how you get redemption. You know, is it through retribution? Is it through forgiveness? So I'm looking into that. I'm looking into like the science of revenge. I'm looking into forgiveness. I'm looking at real life stories. I'm just picking up what I can, what interests me, what looks useful, and looking at how we can ground that in the story idea I've got. Then character. I think moving forwards, that's really where I want to do proper detailed planning. I want to know as much as I can about my characters as they come into this story. You know, I want to know all these little things, even if they don't necessarily appear in the script, but things that have shaped them, and really know who they are, what they are, and really embrace that process too. Because my attention span's not always great with this sort of thing. I can get bored and switch off, but I want to look at it as part of the creative process, because it is. You know, you're laying the foundations for a story. So you know, why not really getting into that? So, you know, theme, character, that's where the bulk of my research is going, bulk of my planning is going. In terms of actual story structure, again, something I picked up from Craig Mazin is that he basically says nobody's written a good script sticking rigidly to a structural template. So I don't want to really try and push too hard to have a really, really detailed outline. I realise I've used really quite a lot in this.
Something I also really love to put into the pre-production folder is any reference films. So if there's any films that I've drawn inspiration from, but not just films, I often put photographers or art pieces, or sometimes like documentaries that I've found. It's just basically a place for you to have all of your research in one place and all of your visual references in one place. But what I really feel like it helps me with is I really love to just write the script, and so once this is out of the way, then I really have the ability to just dive into everything, and if I ever get lost, then I can always just refer back to that script. But some people like to research as they go, whereas like once I'm writing, that's all I want to do. I just want to write.
I can't remember who said it. I've got a feeling it might have been something I read from Sid Field, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But anyway, the advice was know your ending. So that is my major thing. where am I going with this? Where does it all end up? And then I want to have a few ideas of key beats, places I'm stopping off, and then have fun reaching each of those, sticking to this idea of a character evolving around a central dramatic argument. I've not actually tried writing anything to this plan yet, so I have no idea if it's going to be useful or not, but if you follow me on Twitter, you'll probably see if I'm praising it or moaning about it.
Stories don't have to be told in a simple 3-act structure. Someone like Stanley Kubrick taught us that in Full Metal Jacket. That's 2 acts. And yet, with a circle technique, you can tell a story in a solid way. It can be compacted, it can be very solid, and yet it still has room for you to be creative. You can change things about, you can shift things. Your protagonist can be an antagonist. You can do anything within that structure, but because you're always going to end up at the same point at the end, I think it's a great storytelling technique because it allows you the freedom to have a character change without even necessarily needing a set resolution.